What's going on, and welcome in to this edition of Card Central 365, powered by Graybar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. And of course, all content on STL Sports Central is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. I'm Brenden Schaeffer along with Ethan Hannaford as we break down this Cardinals morning game coming at you quick. We're the pregame edition here of Card Central 365 as 11:05 first pitch coming from Cleveland. Ethan, the Cardinals with a chance to secure a sweep. That would be pretty good after game one. Sonny Gray, he was fantastic. Yesterday, Miles Michaelis, not as strong, but the Cardinal offense backed him up. What do you expect for game three now as the Cardinals really have a chance to put the screws to this Cleveland Guardians team, Ethan?
Well, let me first off say that the fact that we're even talking about the potential for the Cardinals to be able to sweep is nice to hear, because about halfway through yesterday's game, you're thinking, well,
Yeah.
I guess that we're going to have to find a way against another lefty, and we'll see how that goes. But you weren't feeling great midway through yesterday's game, so the fact that the Cardinals were able to overcome that deficit and find a way to win. The bats caught fire, and then now you have an opportunity to do so is great. You liked what you saw from Matthew Liberatore in his previous start, and you're hoping that he's able to build off of that. It's going to be interesting how the Cardinals how they do navigate facing off against the lefty today. Now, given that Logan Allen hasn't necessarily had a world beater of a season, a 5-5 record with a 4.25 ERA. But the Cardinals will be rolling. Let's see, 1, 2. Oh wow! Holy cow! As I look through the lineup here, they're finding a way to keep it lefty light on lefties, which is interesting here, considering how many how few righties they have. We'll get into
Right.
the lineup here in a little bit. So you could argue it's not necessarily their A lineup necessarily, because we know how lefty heavy their top guys are right now. But it'll be an interesting opportunity to see if some of these guys like Thomas Sajaci, like Garrett Hampson, can contribute today and make this lineup a little bit deeper than when you look at it first glance it necessarily would be.
Yeah, no Lars Nootbaar in the lineup today. Noticing that he had a swing yesterday that I was a little concerned by, Ethan. I don't know if you saw the moment where Trainer comes out, Ollie comes out after he kind of got tied up on one, and I was thinking for sure, like Newt's leaving this game. I mean, that is the exact scenario you were afraid of when you think about the intercostal discomfort that he had the injection, missed a couple of games in the previous series, but was supposed to be good to go for this one, and he has been, played in the first two games. But when you have a moment like that, he was able to stay in the game. I was just glad to see that. Makes a lot of sense maybe with the lefty on the mound for him to be one of the guys that is out of the lineup today. We'll dive in a little bit deeper to that starting lineup coming up. But first, I want to circle back to something you mentioned. It did feel like in the middle of yesterday's game that the Cardinals were going to be just merely attempting a series victory on this Sunday rather than having a chance to go for the sweep. We love to see what the offense did. That is not new news. We have seen the Cardinals be that type of team, resilient. You get down 6-1 after that rough fourth inning for Michaelis and immediately punch back Alec Burleson with a single that drove in a couple of runs. Kind of gives you that proof of concept, which is something that we've seen to say, hey, game's not over, 9-inning game. And then, of course, the Cardinals score a bunch of runs in the very next inning to take the lead. I want to start, though, with the pitching aspect of this. Like, Miles Michaelis has a bad start. Everybody kind of goes, oh, there he is. That's Miles Michaelis. That's what you get. There's kind of that attitude from Cardinals fans. I think about a number of guys in the rotation this season. Michaelis, Fetty will have games like that. Palante will have games like that. It depends on the week almost as far as which starter the Cardinal fans want to see booted out of the rotation. What's your take, though? Because while it's very true, these blow-up games have come for those three in particular, and even Sonny has had some, Liberatore a couple more recently. I really look at the overall numbers, and the Cardinals are still right there kind of in the middle of the pack when it comes to starting pitching ERA. They're a 4.1 basically on starting pitching ERA, which has them like 16th or so in baseball. Generally speaking, that's what this was designed to be, is a rotation that if you could just get middle of the road production from it, and if the bullpen could be close to what it was last year, and we've seen at times it tail off from that even, but it's been okay. And then the offense jump up which largely we have seen the offense be able to do this year better than 2024. Like, that's a recipe to get yourself in the mix. People are thinking there needs to be change here, but I look at this rotation and say it's not sexy, but that's kind of what it was designed to do in 2025.
Yeah, it's gotten the job done, right? I mean, I know that it is frustrating having the blow up inning, and there have been a handful of blow up starts. I think Michaelis has now had three. Which if you were to tell me that through the midway point, Miles Michaelis only had three blow up starts at the beginning of the year, I would have been like, hey, I'll take that. I'm totally okay with that. Eric Fetty, I believe, has had three. Palante has had probably three as well. So I mean, but you know what else? Sonny's also had three.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're gonna be upset about the other guys' blow up starts, then I think that it's fair to mention Sonny's as well. So even Libby had a couple there
Yep.
at the beginning of June. So I mean, it's not like that's something that not every team goes through. I mean, it's part of the game. I mean, like those things average out, and that's more so what I look at. If you're gonna be upset with Eric Fetty's blow up starts, then don't be overjoyed at his or then when he has a complete game shutout. No, recognize that that's an outlier too, right? That they're both outliers, and that you're probably going to get somewhere in the middle as like what is their average, right? Like that's kind of like the style that the Cardinals have bought in on here, with considering they have so many guys that are contact pitchers. Sometimes like contact's going to get made, and sometimes you're going to get unfortunate luck, and sometimes it's going to be hard contact. That's kind of the name of the game with the style that they have selected. But I would also say that in large part it has worked, because an area that you went into the season saying, yeah, this is probably the weak point, the starting pitching, has not been the kryptonite. They haven't really had that huge kryptonite area that's been like looming over them the entire season. Now there's been stretches where you're like, yeah, if this continues from the starting pitching, they're going to be in trouble. But it hasn't been that. And we haven't had that super long stretch, right, that has really hurt them and has caused them to be completely out of things, or for you to say, yeah, season's over. They haven't had that. So do you like the blow up start? No. But most of these guys, when you look at the numbers, have been able to average out those blow up starts, like with in large part what has been good pitching. Andre Palante, in my personal opinion, you give him a little bit of extra leeway, because this is a guy that they are confident in his stuff, and they think that he could be a part of the rotation in the future. You kind of got to figure out what you have in him. I understand a little bit more of the frustration when it comes to guys like Michaelis or Fetty having those kinds of starts. I get that a little bit more than I would for, like I said, an Andre Palante. But in large part, Eric Fetty's been pretty good this season. In large part, Miles Michaelis has been pretty good this season. So if it means that you have a blow up start on the occasion, then you know what, like, so be it. Now, if it becomes more of a consistent thing, for example, some of Eric Fetty's underlying numbers for the season aren't that great, the xFIP and things like that. Like, he has given up a lot of hard contact. Fortunately, they have a good defense behind him. For a guy like Eric Fetty, I don't really care what the underlying numbers look like until they're consistently showing up in the box score. Because it's not like this is a guy that you're working with for the future.
Right.
I mean, if we, like I said, if we look in a month, Eric Fetty is like, okay, the ERA is mid fours and it has climbed significant or high fours compared to what it is right now. Then like, okay, maybe we're having a different conversation. But like up to now, it hasn't really been an issue. So now a different story with like an Andre Palante or even a Michael McGreevy when he's coming up, because these are guys that you're working on for the future, and you want to figure out what some of those issues are so that they aren't nagging them down the line. There is no down the line for Eric Fetty unless you want to call that September. That would be still unfortunate, right? But up to this point, the underlying numbers for guys like him and Michaelis haven't hurt them. So, could things change? Yes, but I'm way less concerned for some of those things for them than I would be for some other guys in the rotation. I know a long-winded answer to the question, but overall, the Cardinals have been able to survive with mediocre pitching, and unless you're able to find someone that you're not going to have to give up young talent, for that's going to be a rental, then I don't know. I don't know necessarily if I'm a fan of adding, because you do have guys like McGreevy waiting and knocking on the door already. I don't know why you'd want to add to that and putting another guy in front of him. I said rental. I meant someone that's going to be here long term. I got those mixed up. So it's a weird situation that the Cardinals are in, because they are trying to compete while give time to the young talent. We've talked about that over and over. It just becomes more and more real the longer that the Cardinals continue to be in the mix.
Yeah, looking at the numbers from Mike Gillis, he's had 16 starts. 3 of them he's allowed 6 or more runs. There was another one in Baltimore where he gave up 4. Every other game has been 3 or fewer runs, and that's not just earned runs. That's total overall runs. He's actually only had a couple of unearned runs all season. And you look at those 4 bad starts where he gave up, obviously, the 9 runs in Boston, had a 6-run allowance against Toronto earlier this month, and then the game yesterday, and then the one in Baltimore. Across those 4 games, the Cardinals have won 2 of the 4. Of his 16 starts, the Cardinals have won 8 of the 16. He's your number 5 starter. He's performing like that, and you're winning half the games when he pitches. That's good enough.
Sure.
You just, you always want to be a little greedy, and you always would like to get a little bit more, but you're right to say it's not killing the Cardinals, what Miles Mikolas has done this year. And more often than not, I would say 12 of his 16 starts, he's given them a very fine chance to win. Even if those games you have 5 innings, 3 runs, it's not, doesn't jump off the page as far as an ERA would be concerned, but it's going to give you a chance. And that's kind of what you ask for from your number 5. So we'll see as time goes along, but I do generally agree. Like, I just don't see that being a priority to where you go, hey, we're in the mix. We've got to fix this rotation right now. Like, this is what it was designed to be. It was not ever really a high upside rotation. We had some questions about what the floor would look like, and I would say the floor is, a lot lower than what it's actually played out to be, because A, you haven't had injuries, and B, your guys that you thought, Miles had a 5.35 ERA last year. He's still below that, and Eric Fetty is in the low 4s and Palante low to mid 4s. You're getting guys that give you a chance, and the team is built to have to hit. It's built to have to score 5 runs a game to really be able to feel like you're in a good spot. And yesterday, 5 wouldn't have been enough, but fortunately, they got 9. Now, one of the guys that we have seen in this lineup that has been really good lately is Alec Burleson. He's another one of the lefties that is not in there today. What's your take on that? And you can let us know in the comments here on the live chat, guys. Are we cool with this very right-heavy lineup, understanding that the Cardinals haven't performed against lefties? Or do we look at it and say, they've done this in the past. Like, Garrett Hampson started the games against the lefties against the Cubs, and they didn't, he collected 1 hit across those 2 games, not to pinpoint him specifically. But it's kind of like I'm to the point where they have struggled against lefties to the extent that I just want my best players out there. I don't necessarily need to see the right-handed heavy lineup. So JC being in there makes a lot of sense, because he is a right-handed hitter who is ostensibly a good hitter that we think is going to be part of the present in the future. But the Garrett Hampson one is kind of interesting. It kind of fits in to give guys a break and a day off, but I'm curious as we look at the lineup, Ethan, what you think. I'll read it off and then we'll get your reaction. Cardinals are going with Donovan in left, Mason Wynn, Contreras is your first baseman, Arenado, Gorman the DH, so left on left there. Sajayce's at second, Pages behind the dish, Hampson is in right, and they will have Victor Scott II in center field against the lefty.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the last time that Alec Burleson had an off day, I'm still scrolling here. It looks like it would have been, let's see.
It's been a minute, to your point.
It's been since the Dodgers series at the beginning of June. The last time was June 6th, the first game, the Friday night game of the Dodgers series. He's had a long month. He's played a lot of baseball. So, I understand the question, right? Because you do want, you do want to have your best guys in there against the lefty, but I think there are a couple of things to consider. Saw the comment earlier. Samuel said, as TLR would say, we already won the series, right?
Yeah.
So not that you're not always going for not like you're always trying to win a game, because that's always the goal. And would a sweep be great today? Absolutely. But this is also, you have to look at this and say, okay, we have 6 more straight road games.
Yeah.
You got 3 coming up against the Cubs next weekend that are really important. I'm okay giving him the day.
It's a day off. That's like
Yeah,
for
that's
rest,
exactly what it is.
right? And
Regardless of
you schedule those when it's not as favorable of a matchup. No one's
yeah,
saying that Burleson can't hit lefties, and Samuel says Alec deserves a chance. I think to your point,
he's
Ethan,
been
like
good
he's
at it,
had it. He's
and he's
played every
done
game.
well with
Yeah.
it. So I'm totally okay with this. Like, give a guy a day. I'm sure that after playing till since June 6th, probably 24 games, they had a double header in there, 22, 23, or something like that. I mean, like he's probably gassed. I mean, that's a lot of baseball. And I love that we're even talking about the point that Alec Burleson of all people played 22 straight games, because it goes to show that like he earned that opportunity, and it's great to see some of these young guys taking that initiative and earning those chances. So I'm okay with Alec Burleson in there. You look at this lineup, and there's still quite a few pieces that have been hitting the ball as well as of late. Something that does pop out to me when you read this lineup off is Nolan Arenado in the cleanup spot. Maybe we were going to discuss that, right? But Nolan Arenado, a guy that has been consistently down in that 5-6 spot, but more so that 6 spot here. Probably, how long has it been now? You think 6 weeks? Has it been that
It's
long?
maybe a good month or so. I mean,
Okay.
it's been a while, and it's been lefties so that have been above him, right? When you go with that the left right type of lineup alignment, he fits very naturally with where he is. He's a 699 OPS right now. He's a sub 700 OPS. So generally speaking, he fits better in that 6 spot with lefties like Burleson that have been performing. Lars Nootbaar has been on the come once again after his slump. That it's made sense. But I think for today, why not? I don't have any issue with it. Stack. Look, it is more of like it feels getaway day-ish, but it's
Yeah.
based on the opponent. Logan Allen is a left-handed starter. He's not of the caliber, though, of Shota Imanaga or of what
Matthew Boyd.
present-day Matthew Boyd has been doing for the Cubs. So I feel like this is an opportunity for the Cardinals to get it done. I wanted to address this, though, from Adam. I look at it like +3 or +1 only, because this comment of, well, we've already won the series, so you can kind of take your foot off the gas a little bit. It's true. Like, there's a big difference between going 2-1 and gaining a game on 500 versus gaining 3. But it's inherent that you're going to have to give guys off days and days off their feet and days to rest, regardless of how you're performing in a given series or road trip or homestand. So to have the luxury, I would say, to do it at a time where it lines up with the pitching matchup, get more righties in there against the lefty, and it comes at a time where you have already secured the series. Like, if they had lost the first 2 games against Cleveland, that pull to get Alec Burleson a day of rest is still going to exist. That wouldn't have changed, but now you feel a little bit more emboldened to do it, because you have to operate under the premise that it has to happen eventually. You cannot play everybody every game of the year. So with that in mind, I understand Adam's point, but I wanted to highlight that a little bit, because it is something that it's not like a choice as to whether or not you get guys days of rest. They do need it, or you're going to see them wear down at the end of the season. And remember, Alec Burleson is like case in point for this, because last year, second half, he was not the same hitter. So as much Adam doesn't agree, but I'm telling you, Burley is the guy that probably needs that day. He's played every game in June. And remember, you can look at his stats from after the All-Star break last year. Wasn't the same guy. I'm not saying that there's like a rest component to that, but with that in mind, Alec Burleson, that was like kind of the most big league action that we've seen from him. And they were riding him hard down the stretch last year, and he wore down as a result of that. And Samuel mentions the weather. I think we're on the same page with this, Ethan, but that's another aspect I wanted to sort of promote with this is like, you have to rest guys whether you're winning or losing. It feels a little bit better to do it as a luxury when you're winning.
At 100%. The classic saying, right, is it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And you have to treat it as a marathon. And that means
And the other TLR saying, men, not
Yeah.
machines. I mean, that's a fact here.
Come on. You gotta take care of your guys. And like you said, you prefer to be able to do this, right, when you're in a position where you've already secured a series win. So it definitely feels a lot better, saying, okay, I know Alec Burleson today, when you've already secured the first 2. Last thing I'll say here about, Nolan Arenado, you're wondering maybe, man, not even a 700 OPS in the cleanup spot. Nolan Arenado's been a lot better of late. It's been a lot better of late. It's been encouraging here since June 10th. a 288 average, 455 slug, 793 OPS.
Okay.
He's hit 3 home runs in the past, what would that be, 19 games, 20 games. So I'm not saying that the Nolan Arenado of old has returned, but I think that we have seen an adjustment made here in the past several weeks, Brendan, from Nolan Arenado to where do I want him in the cleanup spot every day? No, but I feel a lot better now than I would have a month and a half ago about him in this spot because of some of those adjustments. He just looks a little more comfortable at the plate right now. He's been aggressive earlier in counts. And he's really taken advantage of hanging stuff. It feels like he's just hitting the ball harder. That was the thing that we talked about a lot at the beginning of the season. Like, hey, the bat speeds up, and then he kind of went into this slump where it's like all of a sudden you blink and he's like batting 235. It's like, where did the bat speed go? He looks really comfortable at the plate right now. So hey, I'll ride this from Nolan Arenado as long as they possibly can, because in a time without Ivan Herrera and the lack of right-handed hitting depth, what Nolan Arenado is doing is really important to this club right now.
And here's one that I'll give you as I transition to tell you about DraftKings Pick 6. Nolan Arenado has never faced Logan Allen, but we know that he is good against lefties historically. Actually, Logan Allen has only ever faced Garrett Hampson from this lineup. So an American League pitcher, the Cardinals are going to get their first look at him. This might be a lefty that they're able to handle a little bit. And I think there could be a component if you're playing DraftKings Pick 6. Check out what the stats might be for one Nolan Arenado on there. I'm not sure what my prediction is per se, but I feel like in that cleanup spot, he's been in it for a while and then out of it. He might want to take a little bit of ownership of it today with him back in that role. And if you think the same, you can check out DraftKings Pick 6 by downloading the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and using our code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5. And if you're a new customer using that code, you'll get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Pretty good deal. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Delayed reaction there for you. Adding to this conversation, Samuel mentions that he's never hit a homer against Cleveland. I didn't vet that, but I'll trust Samuel's research on that because he probably hasn't played Cleveland very often.
Who are we talking about? Arenado?
I assume Arenado is the conversation there.
They say that the other night. They said he's the only.
Oh, that's the only team
he hasn't hit one against.
Okay, here you go. I'm just gonna tell you today. He's going yard today. That's the way that this is playing out. Do factor, and again, back in the cleanup spot where he has lived his whole professional life until recently. He's got that chip on his shoulder. At times, he wants it so badly that I feel like that can hamper him when he's going through a slump. But as Ethan mentioned, the numbers over the last 3 weeks or so, he's been pretty good. A lefty on the mound that he hasn't seen, but that hasn't seen him. Logan Allen makes one mistake pitch, and it's leaving the yard. I'm going to say that's my yard call for the day. Nolan Arenado going deep in this one. Let's turn it back around to some conversations about the rotation, because this is a common feeling that a lot of Cardinals fans have. Enough is enough with Michaelis being in the rotation. He's proved that he struggles to pitch 5 innings. Either put him in the bullpen or trade him at the deadline. Couple thoughts with that. Can't trade a guy that doesn't want to be traded because he has a no-trade clause. That's number one. Like, you could always release a player, but just speaking to the question here or the comment, he's got a no-trade clause, just so we're all aware of that. Number two, I don't know if I could think of a guy whose stuff plays worse in the bullpen than Miles Michaelis. We talk about it with Palante, where he kind of needs that leash and that runway to be able to get out of some jams and use the sinker to get some double plays and to be able to do some different things that sometimes allow a longer outing to actually serve Palante better. I kind of feel that way about Michaelis, where if he's coming in for an inning or two, it's just one of those. I just don't think you're getting the most out of that. That being said, he is a guy that has struggled, second, third time through a lineup. So I understand the impetus behind this comment. but I just don't know that the Cardinals are in a position to aggressively make any sort of change when, as I said, all the angst you may have about Miles Michaelis. Do you know the team's record when he starts this year? It's 8-8. And a lot of that you can't. I'm not a big pitcher wins guy in 2025 where like I'm going to cite the win-loss record as a stat to determine how good the pitcher has been. But in like terms of whether or not his performance is ill affecting the team, that's pretty relevant stat. It's like how many games did you win and lose? Yes, there's more that goes into it. How much did you have to burn up the bullpen because Miles Michaelis didn't get you very deep? That was the case yesterday, and it's valid for sure. I'm having a hard time caring as much about that a day after Sonny Gray goes 9. Like the bullpen was in position to be able to throw a little bit yesterday. You're going to get a break before the Cubs series on July the 3rd with that off day to offer another refresh to the pen. Miles Michaelis, he hasn't been great, but A, he's been better than last year. No, he's not justifying his contract, but that's been 2-3 years old. Like there's nothing you can do about that anymore. The Cardinals do not have the AAA pitching depth that is major league ready that people seem to think that they have. Michael McGreevy, 100% ready for the big leagues. I don't know how good he'll be, but he's a big league pitcher pitching in AAA for the time being. But that's the way that it is because behind him, you just don't really have a lot that's ready. Quinn Matthews is not quite ready. Takoa Roby starting to look really good at AAA. Too premature to say he's ready. Tink Kent's still at AA. Like there are guys on the way. That's more of a 2026 conversation. This year was always about, hey, let's just kind of roll with the guys we're already paying, see if we can't squeeze out league average productivity out of our rotation, which they are currently doing, and they have one half of the Miles Michaelis starts. That is the dictionary definition of a number 5 that's keeping you in it. Yes, do I wish they could see him as a number 5 who goes and eats more innings like Miles Michaelis used to? Sure. But the world that we live in is like, there's nothing punitive coming. They're not going to punitively take Miles Michaelis out of the rotation. You could even get to a point where if you're in like August, like they don't make any big moves in the deadline, but they're close and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel of 6 weeks remaining in the schedule and you don't have any pitching injuries because you've just been so darn healthy. Then could I see you go, all right, McGreevy's taking somebody's spot. Is it obviously Michaelis's? I don't know. 2 weeks ago, everybody wanted it to be Palante. Last week, it was Fetty, right? Like there's 3 guys who are number 5s in this rotation. There's a true number 1 in Sonny, and then there's a guy that I would slot kind of between a number 2, number 3 in Liberatore. That's the rotation, but that's the rotation that was designed. It wasn't like they built it in a lab, but it's what they had, and they were willing to say, let's ride through the season and see how that goes. I understand, but I'm not to a point yet with Miles Michaelis where you're going to tell me 12 of 16 starts, he's given him a chance to win. As long as that ratio stays at about 75% and it doesn't dip to 70, 60, 50% where he's getting blown up every 5 days, you're just taking what you're going to get from Miles. I get the frustration, but he's not killing him. He really isn't.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, when you look through his game log, he's had 16 starts. He's made it through 5 innings at least of 12 of them. 2 of those starts where he wasn't able to get through 5 were in his first 4. So in his last 12, he's gone at least 5 innings in 10 of them. And he's had, let's see, in those last 1, 2, and 3 of them have been those blow-up starts in the last 10. So, I mean, most of that matches up still. So I get the frustration. And like you said, Brendan, he is not playing to the value of what they are paying him.
And I get that. And that's not the reason he's
that's
in
the
there.
part that I do understand, right?
Yeah.
But I think at some point fans just have to say, like, okay, like that's who Miles Michaelis is. That's not changing, and they're not going to DFA him.
I don't agree with this. That's because of the contract that he'll play. It's more like it's not like we have to play him because we're paying him and he's part of the team and ingrained because of that. It's like, we're paying him and he fills that role as a number 5 where, to Adam's same point, you take 8-8 from your 5 starter. It's not like it's a future reason that he's continuing to pitch because like, oh, we got this contract, we got to respect him. It's not really that. It's the last year. Like, I think as you get closer and closer to October, you could see the Cardinals make a move to say, hey, if there's one sore thumb sticking out of our rotation where McGreevy is going to take that spot because we think we can maybe win an extra game or 2 and make the playoffs because of it, I think they'll do that at that point. But for right now, as everybody in the comment has recognized, Miles is not a bullpen type. It's just not. He's just not. He doesn't have the the stuff that's going to play out of the pen. If you have him in the bullpen, he's a guy that's going to be like a mop up. Like you're down 8, so you're going to throw in somebody. Yeah, use a position player for that. Miles Mikolas, I think, as much as he's not elite as a starter, his best role is as a starter. As a bullpen guy, you're throwing gasoline on a fire because he's going to come in, and it's just not. I just don't necessarily think his stuff. Some guy's stuff is going to play up in the bullpen. Miles Mikolas, I just don't think his stuff is going to play up. But this is the point that Steve made. They're not going to DFA him because of the depth being too thin. If you did that now, because he doesn't fit in the bullpen, the other option would be DFA/release. And if you do that, you bring McGreevy in, and then you get to, either late July where you could still make a move via trade, or you get to like August 2nd, and then somebody gets hurt, and you've DFA'd Mikolas. Now you're down too many guys. And no, I understand we like Hentz, Roby, Matthews. None of them are ready to take a big league start at this point, in my opinion. Like just the way that they have performed at AAA, it's been pretty up and down. Hentz is not even at AAA, he's at AA, and it's up and down. It's just not time. 26, absolutely. It'll be time to really push those guys in spring and see who can, kind of assert themselves. I'm just not convinced any of the three are going to be ready for a spot start in 2025. They may do it if they really get into a pinch and one of them looks like they're, on the rise and has momentum. Maybe you do that. But you get yourself into a spot where if you say, we're good, we got McGreevy, and then you cast Mikolas aside because you're not satisfied with winning half your games from your number 5 starter, which you should be satisfied doing, and then you have an injury or two, you don't look the gift horse in the mouth. That's not like the biggest endorsement of Miles Mikolas in history, but like it's kind of the gift horse right now where you go, you know what? It's not really a gift because we had to pay $19 million for it or whatever, but it's the horse that's here as our number 5. And since we've already paid for it, it's kind of like a gift. Like we're not just going to throw that away when we're getting somewhat requisite production from that spot.
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly. This was an interesting one from Samuel. If you promote McGreevy, you need someone to take McGreevy's emergency spot, and there's not really anyone to do that. So my question is, does that become Steven Matz again? And then is he put back in that difficult spot if you are to trade someone? McGreevy gets brought up as the 5th starter.
Yeah, that would be the obvious answer. Is like if they did, let's say everybody gets their way. Mikolas is DFA'd. McGreevy's into that spot in the rotation. And by the way, they won yesterday. So none of this is actually going to happen or being discussed. But like I'm playing along with you guys because I don't want to act like, oh, these comments are so beyond the pale, I'm not even going to address them. I understand. Like there are fan thoughts that are pretty interesting and relevant. And like I don't mind disagreeing with them, but breaking them down as to why. I'm not just going to say, oh, that's stupid. I want to be like, well, here's why I think that's probably not going to happen. The Matz part is interesting because you could, in theory, have him go back into a starter role if you really got into a pinch. But I would say like the McGreevy emergency spot isn't as much of an emergency spot as it's been like a luxury to have a 6th starter during the stretches where they don't have off days. And pretty soon they're going to get their off days back. Yeah. I mean, in July, you'll have some off days. You obviously have the All-Star break that's going to give everybody some ample rest. And then August, September looks a lot different with more Thursday off days returning. And there's even a Saturday off day mixed in there. So it is going to be a little bit different, I think, the last 2 months of the season compared to what we saw in April and what we've seen in June, where, they really needed to try to mix in a 6th starter to keep the starters in their 5-man rotation fresh. But yeah, that's a good point from Samuel is like, it's a trickle down, Ethan. I think that's what it boils down to. It's a trickle down to all the roles that are filled right now. We maybe don't realize the extent to which if you remove one piece from that and then one thing goes wrong, it's kind of like a house of cards. It could it tumbles on you if things break in the wrong direction.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
And I agree with this too. Like this is not me saying get Mikolas out of here, but we're talking about it because people had comments to that end.
Right, totally. Yeah, no, and I think we hit on that pretty well, and I think that we summarize that's probably not going to change. Like, could they trade away one of those guys at the deadline? Yeah, but I personally would be really surprised if they did. Yeah. Who knows what can happen between now and July, was it 30th? Is that when the deadline is this year?
31st? I don't know. It's different every year.
Yeah, so end of July, could something change? Perhaps, but as of now, you have a formula that has worked up to this point. And I personally be surprised if they change it. Are any of these guys at this point going to bring in big name prospects or anything that's really going to
No.
contribute? No. So is it worth it? Is it worth it? When all of a sudden the pitcher goes down, then you're in big trouble. Then you're in big trouble because there is no one really after Michael McGreevy. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Let's hope that this lineup can just go back to it here. Let's hope they can get back to mashing like they were yesterday. Nolan Gorman, quiet day yesterday, but overall, I've liked the way he's been swinging. It's interesting, even the way that he's striking out now, Brendan. When he does, I'm curious about this. Does even that look different to you?
Gorman?
Yes, in the sense of, because here's my thought with him. When he was in the stretch, when he would just go through and it'd be like 1 for 22 stretches or whatever, right? And he couldn't buy time. It felt like there was so much pressure being put on every single at bat for him because he was getting so few. It looks even now when he is swinging and missing, he looks more relaxed and more comfortable at the plate. And I think he's taking better at bats even than he was earlier in the season, and has better pitch selection because he is getting more consistent playing time. So that's why I say, like, even the strikeouts look a little bit different now because he's not going up there in the next at bat. You're like, he's toast for the day. It felt like there was maybe a little bit of a mental head case that was going in with that because he was getting so much time, that so much was getting put on those 3 at bats because it may be the only 3 at bats he gets for the next 3 to 4 days. That doesn't feel like the case right now to me. It looks to me like he's playing so much looser than he was earlier in the year.
Yeah, I think that could be a fair assessment. And like today is a left-on-left opportunity that he is granted. When you have a lineup of lefties, and if you were to rank, and it depends on the point in the year where you would do this, but like generally speaking, ranking the lefties in terms of production and the way that you feel about him, like Donovan would probably be at the top. Burleson is working his way up that list. Nootbaar is still up there. And Victor is in there for his defense. But Gorman, of like the guys who are bat first players of the lefties, would be like kind of the bottom of that list generally. And he's the one that's getting the opportunity today. So I think to your point, like that's not unfounded that he might have that little bit of a level of comfort where like any day that I go 0 for 3 with 2 Ks is not going to end up being the last day I get to play for a month.
Right.
Like I think that does in a positive way impact a player and give a guy an ability to, roll with the punches a little bit. And that's not something that he had been able to do previously simply because of the opportunities. We're going to wrap things up here pretty soon. The first pitch is just about 25 minutes away, but I wanted to mention this back on the Michaelis conversations. Giving up 6 runs in 4 innings is not an example of keeping you in it. They did win the game, but the other starts, the 12 of 16 where he went 5 innings or more, 3 runs or fewer, those are the ones that are keeping you in it. So to our point, 75% of the time he's keeping you in it. And in the 4 games where he didn't, quote unquote, keep you in it, they won half the game. So I guess they were in it. You know what I mean? I'm not crediting him for that, but I do think that is an aspect of it.
It's an offset of the last few years because it feels like the last several years he hasn't been able to get any run support. So it's refreshing to see him finally get those and get him a couple of times on evenings when he hasn't had his best stuff, right? So it's like you said, it's not talking about that being acceptable. No one likes that. No one says that is okay. But the rate in which he has done that is much less than it has been the last couple of years. And that's where we're saying, like, okay, like you can live with it a little more if it isn't happening every other start. And it hasn't happened every other start in 2025.
And it can't start that way. Or by the time you get to like mid-August, that's when you can see, okay, we're past the deadline. It would be a little bit risky, but you know what? We've been healthy. If they're still healthy to that point, they could say, hey, we've got 5-6 weeks of the season left. If we win an extra 2 games because McGreevy starts instead of Michaelis, that might be what gets us in the playoffs. Like maybe that's what they do. But the other thing is, like, I'm not convinced that Michaelis is going to be their worst starter the rest of the way either. Like between Palante, who I would not peg either, but like Fetty's had his blowups too. Michaelis has had his blowups. Like there's not one guy that you're going, oh, he's dragging the rotation down. You've got 3 guys performing as capable number 5s. You've got a number 1 in Sonny and a guy in that like number 2, number 3 range in Libby. That's your rotation. It's been good enough to be the 16th best ERA in baseball for starters, and that's that. You would take that to the end. You're going to have to hit a little bit more because of it to be a top 12 team that makes the postseason, which they can still very obviously do. We'll get out of here on this. C. Ramirez asks, what will it take to get fans to appreciate Ollie? At this point in the season, I just don't get it. I mean, it is crazy to me to see some of the comments about Ollie Marmol, and like people are convinced that they know what it is and what's going on because they'll say things like, yeah, Ollie left Michaelis in too long, even though he didn't even get through 5, and you're in the middle of a stretch with no off days for like a million years, and he left him in too long, and that's just par for the course. That's Ollie mismanaging the pitching staff. There's a portion of the Cardinals fan base that does not understand that Ollie Marmol's probably greatest strength as a manager is his collaboration with his coaching staff to be able to manage the pitching really, really effectively. It is a plus in his favor how he manages starters, how he pulls them at the right time more often than not. You're not going to bat 1,000 because you can't predict the future.
No one does.
No one can predict the future but like uses context and uses data and uses his eyes and his staff's eyes to understand where a guy is, and then oftentimes pushes the right buttons with the bullpen. You can't like I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this without getting in trouble, but like the most basic level of thinking about baseball where there's just like no brain involved, no thought process, I'm just going to react, is like a reliever comes in and gives up runs, so it's the manager's fault. That is just about as dumb of a baseball fan take as you could have, and people do it all the time because it's knee-jerk. It's like it's reactionary, and that's the nature of it. But like that's not actually the way that it works.
Right.
I just wanted to bring this comment up because I agree. Like, how could you look at this season and say Ollie has not been anything other than just like really, really good?
Yeah,
and helping guide the Cardinals to where they are.
And maybe is it possible that 4 years later we're still talking about the way that he was brought in? Like maybe some fans are a little bit
sure, that's fine.
Are a little bit bitter. I get that. Like that, no one is justifying the way that things went with Mike Schilt, but that doesn't mean that necessarily Ollie was a bad hire. And it's easy to put it on the manager, right? When you see like 71 and 91 and in 2023 and 83 and 79 in 2024, like I get that, but he is like these comments have been saying, Ollie Marmol is not the real problem. And this is the thing that we get the behind the scenes look. And even in the year when they were absolutely terrible and they won 71 games, Brendan, like we were the ones that were hearing players comment on how highly they viewed Ollie Marmol. Like we were the ones that were able to hear that. And some of that gets like shared with the fans, but not all of that. And you can tell when that's genuine and when it's smoke, right? You can tell it's clear that doesn't happen everywhere. Right. And these guys, I have not ever heard, and not to say there aren't things that people have picked apart or players have probably picked apart and said, I don't like the way he does this about Ollie Marmol, but we have never heard, or I haven't ever heard a player say a bad thing about Ollie Marmol. In fact, it's been the opposite, where they said he is a player's manager. That his ability to communicate and work with the guys and keep people invested is so important and has proven to be big the last couple of years when you've gone younger and you've had really rough stretches in there, that he's not the one that constructed this team. That wasn't him. So, there's a part that fans don't see of that. And to a certain extent, I can't blame you, because if you want to find it, you have to look harder for that probably. But I take a lot in the way that players speak about certain things. When there's not necessarily stats to back who the best defensive catcher is always, but the pitchers speak extremely highly about Pedro Pajes. That has to mean something. The way that the players talk about a manager has to mean something. And I think that that's a big reason as to why Ollie Marmol is the manager that he is because of the way that the players view him.
And by the way, it's the players that have actually experienced him and played for him whose opinion I'm going to care about. That athletic poll did have Ollie Marmol listed as one of the managers that players would not want to play for. But the rules of that poll were like, you're not going to vote for your own manager. And so, not that anybody would, it's anonymous, but I mean, it would probably be a little bit risky to be in the clubhouse being asked about that and go, yeah, that guy in that office in there, that's who I would hate to play for. It's an anonymous poll. It's a small sample because like there are 40 players that I think answered that question. 5 of them said Ollie. And just like to tell you how these work, like the athletic writers for the various teams are going to have to get get these polls out and ask these questions. And like, they might be getting a few players from a clubhouse. Though I don't have any idea, but like, let's say the one in Texas Rangers, their reporter asks a question and it's like, oh, I don't know. I saw that Ollie Marmol on TV. He was kind of getting really mad. He just looks kind of annoying. You know, I wouldn't want to play for him. You see how he jumped over the dugout railing? Like, that was extra. I don't want. And then his teammate in the corner might hear that and goes, yeah, put Ollie down for me too. Like, I do not put any stock in that. I understand why people talk about it. And I do think those athletic polls are very interesting to kind of like take the temperature of the league and a lot of different topics. But I had a friend bring that up to me yesterday, and I was like, dude, this is not. I'm not going to hear that as like why Ollie is a bad manager and the Cardinals need to fire him. Like that, it's beyond the pale for me to think that has any bearing when it's either A, guys that have not ever experienced him, or like maybe there would be a disgruntled player or two that used to be around and maybe they put a vote in, which I have no idea who those 5 votes were across Major League Baseball. Obviously no Cardinals involved in that. So let's not start up a conspiracy, but I did want to mention that because it did come to mind when and maybe some of the names have been in the comments, but I have no reason to believe that any of those names were actually pulled. Like, I do not. It's fun for like narrative street because we all know the story of, you know, what had happened in St. Louis. But yeah, I'm not. I'm not getting into that because I that would be unfair because I have no idea who the players were that voted that way. I just would be led to believe like that's not who's, you know, riding and bleeding and living with Ollie Marmol as their manager every single day. Those are the opinions that I do think are the most valuable.
And Jerry making this comment, I doubt that Cardinal players would talk bad about any manager they play for. I doubt the organization would put up with it. That is why their announcer always drinks their Kool-Aid. There is a difference between like talking in a professional manner about someone and giving someone praise, in my opinion. And that is what we have heard consistently time and time again from Cardinals players when asked in the clubhouse. And there's constant praise. So that would be my argument against this. There's a difference between, you know, speaking about someone in a professional manner and giving someone praise. And I've heard a lot of praise for Ollie Marmol.
Yep, agree with that. So that's going to be the way we end this because the Cardinals are starting up a game in about 15 minutes. But appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode of Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. And of course, all content on STL Sports Central is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. That's Ethan Hannaford. I'm Brenden Schaeffer. Join the channel right after the game concludes for the post-game edition of Card Central as we see whether or not the Cardinals were able to get the sweep. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll talk to you next time on Card Central 365.